Now, for quite a while, I've wanted to do an episode where I introduce you to my amazing daughter, Stella. Now, I introduced you to her music at the end of the last episode, and today you get to meet her in person. We talk about growing up in a world where spirituality, personal development, and doing your work matters. She shares her perspective on staying aligned, making hard decisions, and being human. Plus, we talk generations and their challenges and what Millennials and X-Gens might share in common. So let's dive in and get the Millennial Perspective. Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. If you're looking to improve your life, to heal, to grow, and mature as an individual, but maybe you found that some of the personal development and consciousness stuff has given you the impression that you need to be super serious and vigilant to get anywhere meaningful, or feeling like maybe you're just not up to snuff. Well, this show is here to remind you of your humanity, and in fact that's where your true joy and brilliance lies. With over 25 years of experience in the transformation biz and having developed MPA, one of the world's simplest, pressure-free approaches to growth and well-being, if I do say so myself, I'll be sharing tips, steps, and insights that'll help you navigate all the aspects of life as a growth-seeking being. On this show, it comes to you with a good dose of humour, maybe a smattering of colourful language, a reminder not to take things so personally, and most importantly, to be kind to yourself along the way. Make sure you hit that follow button, and let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young, and a happy 2022 to you. And joining me today is my daughter, Stella.
Hey.
Say hi.
Hello.
I'm very lucky because my daughter's agreed to actually come on my podcast, and I'm going to pelt her with questions. And she tells me that she's not had a chance to have a nap today.
No, I woke up at the ungodly hour of 6:30. Ridiculous.
And so we'll see what pearls of wisdom she's speaking. So
enjoying the world.
Stella, you're 25.
Yes.
Oh my God, that makes me feel. And I'm more than twice your age, but we won't go there. So, for the benefit of my wonderful listener, what do you do for a living? That kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Who are you, Stella?
Who am I? That's a big question to start with. No, yeah, I'm 25. I'm a teaching assistant. I work with special needs children in primary school, and yeah, I just go around being me. I know it's a really difficult question to ask, like who are you? And I suppose most people do answer with like their job and stuff and their age and things like that.
Oh, well, we can get into the deep who are you later. Some of these questions
are
a bit deep. So what's great about your life right now?
I have lots of things to be really grateful for this year. I feel like it's been a bit of a bumpy one, but it's been like I feel like everything's kind of ending on a high for me. So yeah, I'm really enjoying my work at the moment. I'm really enjoying working with the children that I work with, and things are lined up for my teacher training next year, as you know, so I'm really excited to have something to look forward to coming up. Very happy in my relationship at the moment. Really nice. Yeah, just got a new car. There's lots of things that, like been waiting for a new car for a long time, been working on the relationship stuff, like it's all kind of coming up, Stella, this December, ready to go into the new year, which is really, really nice. So I'm really grateful that, I've got so many good things, sort of irons in the fire, as it were.
Yeah. So just because there's a full disclosure there, we're recording this before Christmas.
Yes.
In the readiness, it'll be going out. It'll be the first one in the new year. But yeah, so let's start getting more into it, because what I thought would be fun to do was to sort of get a millennial perspective on how you see the world and how you see yourself and how you see life and that kind of stuff. So, what are you happiest about with yourself? It's like, of all the wonderful things about you, my wonderful daughter, what are you happiest with about you?
What am I happiest with about me? I think, you really don't want to sound like a dick, do you? I think I'm really grateful for the upbringing that I've had, because it's given me a willingness to like work on myself when things come up. I feel like I have like a good set of tools to manage things and process things and learn and grow from experiences. So I think, again, I've had a year where I've really made the most of that, and I feel like I've reaped the rewards from it. And yeah, I think it's a good thing to be able to self-reflect and to have a few tools in the toolbox. So I think that's a good thing. I like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty good at like making difficult decisions and being true to myself. There's been a couple of times, like when I was doing teacher training originally, and it's just I wasn't in the right year group. I was doing secondary and I was meant to be doing primary, and that was a really tough decision to leave the PGC and take a break and have a bit of a circuitous career route to get me back to where I am now. But like that was a tricky move, but it wasn't right. And so I think I'm quite brave when it comes to making decisions like that. And obviously left a relationship this year that I really wanted to work out, but I was really glad that I made that decision ultimately, and that took a while to get to, but I did it. And so I think, making those hard choices and like feeling more myself for it, I think that's something that
I think that's amazing. It's amazing that you have that. Well, there's sort of three things there, aren't there? So, firstly, that being raised, although me and your mum split up when you were young, both of us have a commitment to personal growth. So you've had that from both sides. I think there's more common now. I think that sort of, I would say kids your age, but that's just because you're my daughter. Young adults your age, have at least one person in the family, or maybe one parent is more common that is sort of lives in this way. But I think it's not that common, perhaps, both parents. And also, I think there's also many people that would go, even if both parents did go, that's terrible, and just eschew it, send it away. But you've embraced it fully in your life, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, of my peers, I don't really have any other friends who are sort of spiritually inclined or have parents who are spiritually inclined. So yeah, I'm kind of, and I've had friends who've come around and talked to mum sort of in depth about stuff, and I've kind of zoned out a bit because I've had those conversations with her, and but they've been like kind of desperate for that bit of information for personal development, for things like that. So yeah, I do always feel very lucky to have had that.
Yeah, and then to be aware that you can make hard decisions. I wish I'd had that at your age. What we go through, but that's pretty amazing to just to have that level of self-awareness. Do you think there's because you said you got your friends who had a sort of hunger for it? Do you think that's true of your generation in general? Just to offer you a perspective, sort of from my perspective, looking down, and again, I suppose I'm skewed because you and I suppose my friends, to a decent portion of the kids, or the kids that I see interacting with, are way more emotionally aware, way more able to relate and understand themselves in the context, to be more open, less self-conscious, if you like, in the way that we were growing up with the very strong sense of needing to be somebody or something. I think there's different flavors of that. But do you think there's a sort of a hunger in your age group to go deeper in personal development or that kind of thing?
I think it's really difficult to say. I think there's people in every generation who are looking for more, and I guess maybe birds of a feather kind of, I would, I've had friends who are interested in that, but then I've also had friends who really aren't, and aren't self-reflective in that way. So I think it would be really difficult to say. I think there's a lot of like onus on finding out who you are and finding yourself and your identity like in the world. I think a lot of millennials are quite disillusioned. I think that's one of the best words to describe like that generation. And I think that maybe pushes people to like look for a bit more. And, you know, with social media, it's a lot easier to like bounce off of other people and find people who are like you and, you know, build an identity in that way. But honestly, I don't really come across loads of people who are like looking at like spiritual content, like the kind of stuff that I would look at. But, you know, one of the things I like most about the new relationship that I'm in is that he's very like self-reflective. And even though his parents aren't that way, he does that naturally. So I don't know if it's kind of like just like globally, I suppose, like there's like an evolution of consciousness that maybe like the people coming through are going to be a bit more like self-aware, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, it's really horses for courses, I guess. There'll be some people in some place who are really into that, and other people who are just still on that journey of even figuring out that there's something to figure out, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true. I think there is again, from the non-personal perspective, it's that we're kind of all in the bath of consciousness. So there's a certain amount of going along with that evolution as being part of the human being in general. So definitely, I agree with that. So let's have a look at the other side then. We've looked at what you're happiest with. So given that you look at things through, you know, working on yourself, so what do you think you need to work on yourself the most?
See, normally it comes to this time of year and I'm like so ready to make use of the new year. And I'm like, I have loads of goals and I always like goal set for ages, like New Year's Day, I'm journaling and goal setting and all that kind of stuff. I think because I've had such an intense year of personal development and like I really have gone for it, that there's kind of a lull for me at the moment where I'm like, okay, I can just kind of enjoy having done that a lot. And kind of, you know, I was really into Abraham like over the summer. I was like, for lack of a better, I was like studying it religiously, but you know, to a great benefit. And I don't know if I have as many things in mind at the moment that I'm like really working on. You know, like me and mum have done some good stuff in our relationship lately, and that feels in a good place. Obviously, you know, have split up and with the previous partner, I'm now in a new relationship, and that's in a good place. I think one of the things that I always have on my list of things that I want to get better at is like physical health stuff. And that often is the thing that falls by the wayside. Like every year for the last fucking 5 years or something, it's been like, drink more water. It's like one of the main things on my like to-do list. I think I'd really like to find a way to have more physical energy in myself to pursue like the things that I want to do. You know, I think like having a bit more balance in my life and like really taking, you know, like first chakra, kind of really taking care of myself physically so that I can pursue more experiences is something that I'd really like to do this year. And I think as like a 9 on the Enneagram, like I think procrastination is something that can quite easily like drain me of the opportunity to like, yeah, have more experiences and live a more present life. So I think, yeah, being more present, being more in the physical, taking better care of myself in that way. And yeah, having some more experiences. Like COVID's a bit shit, but it's kind of fucking things up. But like doing more clubs, like having more hobbies, like investing in things like that. Like last year I was in a real like figuring out who I was in my career, my relationships. Like I'd just like to build on that this year, I think. And part of that will be, you know, picking things back up with my spiritual practices. You know, I've had that time to kind of relax and enjoy myself, but you know, I want to get back into what I was doing sort of over the summer was like doing my positive aspects journal every day, meditating every day, things like that, just to like have those like key elements to keep me on track. And then when I'm doing that, maybe I'll have, you know, I'm sure my next set of karmic pancakes will come up, then I'll be back in the saddle again. But yeah. Well, I'd like to focus on like my physical health a bit more.
Yeah. So a couple of things to put into context in case people don't know. So you mentioned Abraham. That's Abraham.
Yeah.
Secret Behind the Secret. I imagine most people have heard of that, but that's what you're referring to. And you mentioned being 9 on the Enneagram, which I haven't gone into in the podcast. So the Enneagram is a sort of a model of different personalities, of which there's 9 different types, and they're pretty good maps. The maps are always, it's like astrology. I love astrology. I love the Enneagram. There's various sort of personality profile maps which are really useful. And I believe I introduced you to the Enneagram when you were about 9, I think, or maybe earlier.
Yeah. I deserve royalties on that book, because that is one area that my friends have always been interested in. There's like more than 10 friends, I think, that have bought that book since you introduced it to me then, throughout high school. And yeah, everyone's always really, really interested to do the quizzes and to figure out which type they are. And everyone that I've kind of worked with it has found it really helpful and accurate. So, yeah.
I think it's a really interesting, and you just hoovered the information up in that group. I mean, you've been very academic in your life. I mean, just to blow your horn, you got a first in the chemistry degree, which clearly wasn't from me. And but you were just able to really absorb it, and I love that you introduced it to your friends. But I think it's really useful to understand us. One of the first points is to understand that we sort of often follow paths and choices in the survival strategies and how we perceive the world that aren't that have been walked before and understood before. So it gives you kind of a shortcut to understanding yourself and those around you. I think is one of the things you found helpful, is to help you understand the people around you. And I don't know about you, but for me, one of the things is there's always a plus and a minus to these kind of tools. The minus is that you start, it can easily be used as a shortcut to label people.
Yeah, you just be careful of that.
Yeah, so you miss the nuances. But the plus, or my understanding is you get to have some compassion, because you understand that there's no in the painful end of each personality map, there's automatic patterns which are shit for the person doing them, even if they're shit to other people as well. And when you start to see them clearly, then you get some compassion for, I understand what's running the show there. And obviously at this point they're not aware in a place where they can become conscious, so I can have more compassion and become more my response to it can be less reactive. Is that your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right saying it's compassion.
Yeah,
because if you read it, you're like, oh god, there's shit for everyone. Like, you're like, oh, like, God, it's so tough being me, and then you're like, oh no, everyone's got it really rough. Yeah. I remember sitting around with friends not that long ago, like going through the basic like red flag stuff for each type. And I think this is a very millennial way to spend time in some ways, because we were just like, oh, this book is just like ripping the shit out of all of us. Like, oh, but it was, I think it was interesting. It's almost like a getting to know you thing. It was like, oh, like this is your stuff. And it's hard, but it's like interesting.
And I think the one that you like the most is it the Wisdom of the Enneagram, that one?
Yeah, that's the book that's the book I get royalties. I should get royalties on.
Yeah. So I'll put that in the show notes, which, by the way, because this is episode 113, to go look at the show notes, you'd go to www.beabrillianthuman.com/113, and I'll put that book in there so you can link through to it on Amazon or somewhere like that. Fantastic. Yeah. Do you have an Amazon sales account? Because I could always put the royalties your way.
Yeah. If only.
I don't. So what matters most to you? I hit you with it. What matters most to you in the world?
I think being aligned with myself. Like, again, I suppose I'm using language there from like Abraham Hicks, but feeling like I'm aligned with source energy and making decisions from that place. That's been my endeavor this year, really. Because then I feel like I can trust myself more. I can trust what's happening in my life. And it just feels better, like just feeling good, I suppose. Like the most important thing, I suppose, in a place where you're feeling joyful. I've been in places where I'm really, really, really far away from that. And yeah, so I suppose the most important thing to me is a sense of joy, but also peace, I suppose, is really important to me as well. So I think for me, those are kind of one and the same thing, but feeling like I'm making decisions that are true to me and are in alignment with myself. And
So if someone's listening to this and goes, "Oh, that sounds nice, being aligned with yourself. How the hell do I do that?" Do you have like put you on the spot, Stella? 5 steps to being aligned. But just to think about it in terms of what's the kind of, how do I recognize I'm not aligned? And
feels bad.
Feels bad.
So like often, so Abraham Hicks has a vibrational scale, and so right at the bottom is like fear and all those like depression thoughts, and that's, I mean, I think most people have visited that place. And it's not personal, it's just a vibration and everyone can go there, and all the way at the top is joy and peace and those lovely things, and then there's kind of steps in between. So I think it's really helpful to use that to feel out where you are so that you can aim for thoughts that feel just a little bit better. You can't jump from fear to joy, but just stepping up slowly has been really helpful for me, finding myself into a place of alignment. But I just really say, even without looking at that, just I think everyone can kind of feel this thought feels a little bit better, this thought feels a little bit worse. So it's just kind of navigating like that and listening to yourself in that way. And even if the thought that feels better is they're a fucking dick and I want to just push them in front of the car, that feels better than whatever is really, really, really low, and then from that it's they're a fucking dick, but maybe I shouldn't push them in front of a car. And it's like they're a fucking dick, but they're probably having a bad day. And, you go up from there and it just slowly feels better. And then you go, okay, I'm a bit bored of thinking that person's a dick because it's not really making me feel very good. And, it builds itself up to the point where you can go, I'm super zen, they're fine. And then the next day you might think they're a fucking dick again. But, it's just trying to, I think, pay attention to yourself about what feels better and not judge it either way, because you have to go up through all of those things to get to like a place of feeling good. Maybe that's a really bad example, I don't know, but I'm just
it's a good example, and you just pointed to what I was about to say, which is that I think one of the things that blocks people from that is their self-judgment about those early phases, where there are, if they identify as, say, I'm a good person, they're feeling utterly depressed, then out of depression often is anger. I think on the scale it's more aligned than depressed, because depressed is a form of suppression often of anger. And so but then if they're disallowing themselves from being angry, or when they become angry they judge it and push it back down, they bounce off and get through the anger. So it's that piece of allowing yourself to feel the less comfortable things that threaten the identity can sometimes be the path out of that stuckness. So I did do an episode 27 was which uses the unconditional pivot exercise. It takes Abraham's pivot exercise, and I expanded it just to make it very incremental, because I found that sometimes it can be a bit of a leap for somebody who's not used to doing that kind of thing. So I'll link that in the show notes, and you can download the unconditional pivot exercise for free as well, but that will be in the show notes for today.
I'm allowed to swear, right? Like I just realized I swore. You're gonna bleep me out.
Yeah, I've got to bleep it. No, yes. Anyone who listens to this show will already know that it's has colourful language. Anyone who hangs around me and what I do is gonna, if you're not comfortable with a colourful language, it's your choice.
This
is my daughter. We swear.
It's because I'm a primary school teacher, so I have to be really good all the time, and then I go on holiday and I'm like
like get it all out, get all that.
I have to get a year's worth of swearing in, like
So here's a big question for you. So having looked at what matters to you most, which is alignment. So what is your message to the world? I know it sounds a bit grandiose, but it's like, what's but sorry, that's the question I'm asking you. What's your message to the world if you had one?
I think this kind of answers your last question as well about how to be in alignment, and it kind of comes off what you said about being blocked. I think one of the things that's blocked me the most or caused me the most pain in getting to that place that ends up feeling really good and it's alignment, and then you're like flying and it's lovely. All the really painful bits up to that point often were because I was very attached to a plan or an idea of what things should look like, or what I thought other people thought I should look like. So I've had to do a lot of letting go of that. And so I suppose I would want my message to be some eloquent version of saying, like, God laughs at plans. Like my mum's always said that to me. And I just found it so true. With the leaving my teacher training initially, I'd like killed myself doing GCSEs and A levels on my degree to get to there, and then I was like, this isn't where I'm meant to be. And yeah, I think being willing to like take that leap of faith and let go of plans that you've had. And again, like I had a 6-year relationship that I was so attached to that being the one, and I had all these plans and ideas, and like letting that go is the best thing, but it's really, really scary. So I guess like having a bit of like, have faith that you will be taken care of if your main focus is alignment and doing what's true for you, even if it doesn't look like what you thought it would look like, because the reality is it probably isn't going to look like what you thought it would look like. So like going forward, I'm trying to be very kind of open to whatever my path is going to look like, and also along the way, when I was trying to find a new career after the PGC stuff, I was really aware of like what other people thought of me, and I was like, this image of myself as this person who was meant to have a good job or do something, I don't know. I really had to let that go as well. So I think again, it's just being true to you, whether that looks like what your friends think it should, or your parents think it should, or what you think it should. Like that is always going to make you feel way better than sticking to something that isn't right for you.
Well, that's a pretty damn fine message. It aligns with the sort of the core, one of the core parts or pillars of the philosophy of non-personal awareness is drop the agenda and drop the dogma, which is kind of similar thing. And then the alignment piece, we talk about animation, which is following the animation, which requires you to drop the agenda, because it's like what's true in the moment is another way to say what's, you're going to be aligned with it, or at least you and the universe are going to be lined up together in that position. And I found, and a lot of it is like for people using MPA, certainly these days where we're doing practitioner training, it's like helping as a facilitator of someone else to really drop the agenda, drop the judgment, and trust that the most natural, best paced flow for your client is going to happen when you follow that and drop any agenda about what it should be. But that is, of course, a microcosm of life. As I say to people who do the practitioners, if you apply this in your life as best you can, and we're all human, then then that's going to facilitate the best possible. Is your best life hashtag? So yeah, very, very cool.
Yeah, I guess everyone needs to go at their own pace. I think both of us have been in situations where, like, we're both have been in relationships and we've been like, I'm just going to let them figure that out at their own pace and, not put any of my opinion on it. And I think for both of us, that's always been the best. And I imagine for anyone that you work with as well.
Yeah, because again, one of the things of pacing is if you force somebody past their pace, it's just it kind of creates friction and resistance. We tend to be, we might be humans, but we're also part donkey, I think. And we sort of tend to, donkeys put their hooves in if you try and pull them. There's that sort of classic metaphor. And I think when you try and force someone past their pace, they tend to show resistance, which doesn't help anybody. But if you allow them that non-judgmental space and just, you can offer perspectives always, but they tend to find
which
a
I
way.
have done.
You're just making this absolutely clear, aren't you? Yeah, you have done relationships, yeah. That might not be the best for you. No, it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. I'm an awake father and demonstrating how to do relationships really well. There we go. So I've got a couple more for you.
Okay.
This one, I'm going to go with a generational thing. So obviously you have your perspective. So we're just going to make the grand assumption that you speak for all millennials. Okay.
Okay.
Just
I'm sure they'll be happy with that.
I'm sure they will. So what do you think that our generation most need to hear or understand from your generation?
I feel like there would be some really opinionated people with some really good ideas about this, but I don't think I'm one of them. To be perfectly honest, what does your generation need to hear from my generation?
Maybe it's something that maybe you feel that we misunderstand, or I don't know, it's a very general question. You only have your perspective, but I was kind of curious if there was something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of my, like you said, a lot of my life has been like academia, and I think that's changed a lot. And I think the only thing I can think is I've heard kind of some people talking about GCSEs being easier or things being easier on us than they used to be. And like, I know a lot of people are kind of like, you can fuck right off with that because we've got our own set of problems, and like, like houses are much more expensive than they used to be, and blah, 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 blah. So maybe I feel like I should say something along those lines, that things like that are really tough. But then, you guys probably had all your sort of tough things as well. I think it's tough for every generation, different ways.
I think that's a really good point, because I've banged that drum a lot, which is that every generation, there's no truth without context, and we all have our own context, and there are different, each generation faces its own challenges, and inevitably there are certain things that improve or evolve over time. So there are things that are, in quotes, easier for your generation than my generation, and my parents' generation made it easier for me. So the thing I think of as one of the examples, so my parents' generation was baby boomer, post-war, and their focus was material and kind of making sure we had a roof over our heads and those basic material needs, which was a real challenge at the time. Taking it from toilets out in the back of the yard to toilets in the house is like basic stuff. Then my generation came along and took that for granted, as you do naturally. And then we were like, but what about my emotions?
Yeah.
You don't care about how I feel. So we all became therapists. And speaking from my learning, and worked on and sort of looked more at what's the emotional thing. And then I think, well, my experience of your generation is generally there's, by virtue of that, being emotionally, it being okay to be more emotional is it's more just like in your relation. We've strived for that. Don't you appreciate?
Yeah.
But at the same time, whatever your generation is up to, and not least of which we could look at it as the planet, or there's all sorts of big issues that we've.
Oh yeah, we're meant to be really mad at you about like ruining the planet and stuff. Stop it.
All that good stuff. Yeah, stop. So whatever it is, it's like, but every generation is gonna, because every solution produces the next desire and therefore the next problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely talked like extensively, probably with you, but also with Mum, about the things that she was attempting to correct, like in my upbringing from her generation, and I've sort of discussed the things that I would maybe correct, and I'm sure I'm in my attempts to correct you and Mum. I'm excited to fuck up my children in a new and exciting
whole new way. Yeah
And they can go on and correct things, and
I know it's kind of interesting that part of it with being a parent, and and then you always have the best of intentions to do better, and but I think we do better, but we also do different, and in that you have that sort of pendulum swing of going from one side to the next. But it's the nature of finding our way on our path, really. But yeah, I look forward to grandchildren having an opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm curious to see what I get dealt.
Yeah. So okay, so we're coming sort of to time. So the last question, we did talk about this one before, which is, so what song is the theme song of your life?
Yeah, see, we talked about this, and the one that I sent you, you were like, really? And I played it to Mum as well, and it's a song that she actually really likes. I think it's Smithsy, but she was like, yeah, I don't know if, like, the way I explained my experience of it was something that made sense to her necessarily. I've kind of had to think about it. The one that I always have associated myself with is Another Way by Matthew and the Atlas, which is my all-time favorite band. Everyone should go and listen to them because they're amazing. And I think that in the general thing of it is, someday soon I'll live as I should have lived, and I'll do this as I should have done it, and do that as I should have done it. And I think I can be quite like, hindsight's 2020, and oh, maybe I should have done this or done that, or like again with the procrastination-y kind of stuff, I'm like, oh, I could always do a little bit more, do a little bit better. And I think I have issues with perfectionism and things like that anyway. So I guess it comes a little bit from that angle. But Mum was really sweet when she listened to it the other day, because she was like, you're doing pretty good, you're doing it, you're living in a way that you want to live. And that was not a nice kind of take on a song that I think is quite melancholy, really, because she heard it in a positive way, and you kind of said something similar. And so I think when I'm not feeling like super sad in that, he's listening to some sad music. The song that I think actually represents my journey more is The Middle by Jimmy Eat World. You can put the chorus in somewhere so I don't have to sing it in your edit.
It's The Middle by Jimmy
Eat World. So it's, the chorus is, it just takes some time, little girl, you're in the middle of the ride, everything's going to be all right. But it's good because it's basically like you're figuring things out and you're in the middle of doing that, and it's, the journey's not kind of over yet. And I really feel like I know that I'm kind of at the start of the journey, and I'm doing some good stuff and figuring things out. And it's always a good one to put on when you do feel really caught in a situation. And it's kind of like, I always kind of think, in 5 years I'll look back at this and it'll be like that thing that felt like a really big deal at the time.
Well, that's wisdom indeed. Yeah, because I remember when you sent through the Matthew and the Atlas song, and I love that song, and I love Matthew and the Atlas. You introduced me to them, and and I think because I said to you, "Oh my God, that's so sad," and I think that was really my kind of daddy thing of, "Oh no, we have to see why is my daughter so sad," and then of course you go, "Oh, I'm a failure as a father." Oh, how can I check? She's, all that kind of stuff. But when we actually talked about it, I could see, because it's interesting as sort of, I mean, I can relate to it now when I get over that side of me. I can, again, because we have very similar Enneagram makeup, going back to the Enneagram 9 with the one wing.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, is that sort of that should stuff. It's that perfectionistic side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if, as your mum says, it's like you're doing pretty good, but it's not about doing pretty good. It's like there's always that,
always more.
There's always more. There's always room for improvement. But you can take that as a negative spin, or you can say that's how we are growth-seeking beings. That's how we have that ambition to evolve, actually. So when I thought about that, I thought that's a pretty good one. And again, lovely the balance with the middle, and that what you said about the chorus of this is the middle.
It's a very different vibe.
Very different vibe. Was that the happy one that you sent me through? Because you sent me
possibly. It's certainly on my character playlist of all the songs from different periods of time, telling the Stella story through music. So it's definitely on that playlist for when I took my gap year, my gap 9 months, and I was like, what am I doing in my life? So I found that song then, and yeah, I think it's a really good sort of feel good, you're on your way to feeling better kind of song.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question. What's the theme song of your life? But it's interesting because having just asked you the question, I said I'd be asking that to you. It's not a bad self-inquiry exercise really to think about. So that's my invitation to you, my dear listener, is to think about what's the theme song of your life. And just like Stella,
I'll be curious to see what people come up with. What's yours? Did you decide yours?
No. Oh, I know one of the things when I was thinking about it.
You said something. You said one of them.
There's a rolling, because I thought about it in terms of like you described with Matthew and the Atlas, how you'd it was one that you loved to listen to, and one that always resonated with me, certainly in younger life, and I still love the song to this day, is "You Can't Always Get What You Want."
That was it.
The Rolling Stones, the line of which you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you might find you get what you need. Which again, you can look at and say is, well, that's pretty sad in a way, or cynical at least, you know. But it also has the best groove ever. So it's kind of this
I'll have to go and listen to it because
this mixture of a sort of slightly down lyric but an upbeat beat. And again, even this whole podcast is Be a Brilliant Human, which is like about growing to be your best self, but you've got to have the humanity in it, which means as someone, I don't think I've told you this before, but I had sort of some feedback from someone who said, I love your show because it makes you feel okay that you're a fuck up, you know. And to me, that's a win, because it's like,
I think that's so important. It's
so important to be able to have that and have a smile on your face, recognizing that our humanity will always mean that we're flawed, but that's the wonderful thing about being a human being, is that through our flaws we get to do iterations and discover things we wouldn't otherwise discover. So cool.
I think that's great. And again, that's something on the step to feeling more aligned, is going, fuck this up, but that's okay.
Fuck this up, but that's okay.
In the middle of the ride, gonna be fine.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a great message to leave on. Thanks so much for coming on your dad's show.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. Excellent. Don't let me sound like a total wanker. If I've said anything wanky, just cut it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to leave that bit in for sure. There's don't see any need for an edit on this one. It'll just be back. There we go. I'll do an intro and an outro. Sorted.
Nice.
Right. Thanks so much. So thanks everyone for listening. Be back next week. And have a fantastic New Year's, setting goals without an agenda. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this show, I'd love you to do me a solid and tell someone about it. They can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and most other podcast platforms. Plus, if you visit the website www.beabrillianthuman.com, you can share the show notes to social media and make my day. Also, make sure you hit that follow button, and if you haven't yet downloaded the MPA process sheet, head on over to joelyoungmpa.com and get your free copy today. Big love, and see you next time.